Ukraine is making gains in its counteroffensive, pushing the Russians back along 3 different lines. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin admits his military does not have the weapons it needs to win the war. For the first time since the counteroffensive began, Ukrainian military leadership spoke publicly about the operation. Over the last week, Ukraine's biggest gains came in the directions of Donetsk and Zaporizhia oblasts. Ukrainian troops recaptured at least 7 settlements and a 38-square-mile swath of land. Ukrainian armed forces are also making advances around the eastern city of Bakhmut. The newly liberated land easily represents the biggest gains of the year so far for Ukraine, but the main counteroffensive battles are still ahead. It's estimated Ukraine created an attack force of around 12 brigades for the operation, each with 1,000 soldiers or so. The new attack brigades are armed mostly with Western weapons and armored vehicles. They're being held back from going on the attack, though, at least for now. I'll explain why. The fighting in Ukraine remains fierce, with heavy losses on both sides. Ukraine is using smaller probing attacks along the front lines because they're looking for weak spots. If those small probing attacks find a hole in Russian defenses, then the mechanized brigades being held in reserve will be called in to exploit the hole and overrun Russian positions. It is a very dangerous and costly method of attack, especially with little air support. Images of destroyed Western tanks and infantry fighting vehicles are playing on a virtual loop on Russian state media. President Putin also went on state media this week. The Russian leader took part in a televised discussion with military bloggers, an acknowledgement of the influence the bloggers now wield. In a rare moment of truth, Putin admitted his troops don't have what they need to win in Ukraine. Putin said during the course of the special military operation, it has become clear there are shortages of many things: precision-guided munitions, communications equipment, aircraft, drones, and so on. Putin also said he wants more modern tanks and anti-tank weapons. He then promised the mill bloggers that weapons production had already increased 3-fold and would increase 10-fold for the most sought-after weapons. However, with Western sanctions crippling Russia's military-industrial base, Putin will be hard-pressed to meet his own benchmarks. Russia's economy is in a free-fall. Oil and gas revenues are down 50% and the budget deficit is growing. It's so bad, some economists think Russia could be a failed state within 10 years. Meanwhile, Western support for Ukraine is swelling. Denmark and Germany announced a joint venture to send about 200 more upgraded Leopard 1 battle tanks to Ukraine, and Ukrainian pilots are getting closer to flying F-16s. A day after Putin's TV appearance with the mill bloggers, many of them started reporting an unspecified number of Russian soldiers were killed by a Ukrainian HIMARS strike. The Russian troops died while waiting for their commander to give a motivational speech. The incident reportedly happened near Kreminna. The mill bloggers said a division of Russian troops were standing in formation for around 2 hours before the strike. One mill blogger wrote, "The commander responsible should be shot." We have more unbiased, straight-fact reporting about the war in Ukraine. You can find those stories at straightarrownews.com.
Thanks for watching. We know that Americans' trust in media is near an all-time low. That is why Straight Arrow News is on a mission to bring you unbiased, fact-based reporting. To make sure that you get the journalism that you trust, like and subscribe to Straight Arrow News below. And to catch all of our content, go to our website, straightarrownews.com.